Three, two, one. What's up? Good to see you. I don't want to drop in with another video. Alright, so welcome. In today's video, as promised, we'll be covering, as I said, I'd be doing a series of videos in which I'll be covering my creative process, what it's like when I'm writing and stuff like that. And today, I'll be covering short stories. All right, so let's get right into it. All right, so here I have my pad and I have my pen, so let's get writing. What was that? So yeah, when considering my creative process, I'd have to say it's not what I'm going to delve into. It's not straight laced. It's not that every single time I sit down and decide to write, it's done exactly like this. However, a great number of the times it is. I use this strategy. I find it works for me, and if there are any interested writers out there or potential writers, people who wanted to try it out but have held back, this strategy is a very good way to get started and consistently be able to produce things of a certain quality. So for me, I start off, as with any good story, I believe you have to answer this simple question, which is it revolves around these 5 W's. You know, you'd probably have heard this from primary prep school days way back, which is you're gonna have your where, your when, your who, your what, and your why. And in answering these is really how you're going to get the foundation upon which you're going to build your story. And I build my stories. All right, so the very first thing personally that I usually establish, there are other times when I do it in the reverse, if you want to call it that, but the vast majority of the time I start with the where and the when. The reason for choosing the where and the when is because these two comprise what we'd usually call the setting. And I believe establishing a setting in my mind's eye, envisioning that environment is what it helps very much in establishing that scene in my mind before I introduce the character to it. So the where and the when, which would be descriptive of a time and a place. And to give you an example of how to do this, one thing with writing is that the best way is to show rather than to tell. So you want the audience to discern for themselves these things. So you could say it's 12 o'clock, midday. You could, or you could say that the midday sun stood proudly in the sapphire sky or the azure sky or something to that effect. So you want to introduce those descriptive elements so that you let it be understood that it is this time without even saying it. Or clearly you could say, even without mentioning the time of day whatsoever, you could say something along the lines of the inky blackness, or you could say could hardly see a thing, or you could say the scene was painted orange or tinted orange, which would be indicative of like a sunset or so forth. So yeah, there are various ways you can do that to show the time. And of course, the place you want to describe certain aspects. Use description to paint that picture, to reveal to the audience where it is this is happening. So, in so doing, you would want to say certain things like, if it's like a green surrounding, like where I live now, right now, it's a very green, lush area. So you could use verdant and lush and full, and the trees, and describe the natural surroundings. If it's a more urban scene, you could say the cacophonic march of the engines, the noises and stuff like that that surround the environment with that. And you could use familiar expressions as well, like the concrete jungle for a urban scape and stuff like that. So the time and the place, the where and the when, those are very important stuff for me. So you establish the setting, and where I would have learned, or why I would say, let me phrase it this way. Why I'd say that is a good place to start is that it always usually is when you read things, or even when you're watching things, which is another thing. I learned it again in videography. One of the very first and most important things in videography is that usually you want to get your establishing shot. And the establishing shot, the purpose of it is to really get that surrounding, get the environment, get the setting pinned down, so that the audience know where is it that all of this is taking place. And in general, it's a very good place to start, to get your mind in the right place towards progressing to the next step. So for me personally, what I then usually move on to is the who, the characters, and then obviously the development of how I intend what aspects of this character will be revealed throughout the process, or the revealed through the series of events that will take place. So characterization then will come to the fore, and characterization encapsulates you have aspects of the physical characteristics of the individual. So you can suggest certain things about their physical traits, but I've learned too, although I have a blend. I use both strategies, but it is a valid strategy to give some details and withhold some. And the value of that is that you allow the reader to kind of forge that imagery with their mind. So you give them just enough to sort of begin to create that picture in their mind of how the character looks for themselves. And you'd be surprised how powerful a tool that can be as well. But definitely you'd still want to give them enough details to get certain ideas about the character. And physical characteristics are important because they can tell a story in and of themselves. And they too can help to give context to the whole thing. And of course, you want to reveal now the internal traits of the character, as we spoke about, show rather than telling. You want to reveal certain aspects about the character without overtly perhaps saying it. So rather than saying, this character is shy, my character is shy, how can you show that? By how they interact with other characters, how other characters speak about that character, and stuff like that. So if they're constantly by themselves, if they don't frequently talk to other characters, clearly then it would be inferred, by your audience, oh, this character's shy. So stuff like that. So characterization. And another critical aspect of character is character development. And my specialty personally is short stories, where I find my comfort zone is a story that doesn't drag on for too long. So I wouldn't perhaps be the best person to give you context on how to forge a character along a long series or a long novel or something to that effect, or a longer story. But still, the principle holds true whatever the case is, which is that when you are developing you want some notable difference between your character from the start to the finish, especially if it is your protagonist, which is the main character in the series. And Eve, especially, it is a sign of a good story is even when you see development in your supporting characters and even your antagonists, if there is an antagonist of your story. So all of these are very important things. And moving on from that now into the other aspect, which is the what and the why. And the what and the why, for me, I believe those encapsulate quite well what really we would refer to as the plot or the sequence of events that take place throughout the story. And what the plot usually, the what and the why, are allowed to do, if we spoke about characterization earlier, and why I would have mentioned why character development is such a key component, or why it's good to see, is because in the taking place of the plot, as the plot progresses, it is sign of progress. It's a good marker when you see that the character, earlier, John, he had a tendency to bite his nails when he was nervous in front of people. And he found a significant other. She didn't like that. She says, be more confident in yourself. I find that to be something that's indicative of weakness in you, or showing that you aren't fully confident in yourself, so you bite your nails. That's perhaps just her perspective. Lisa, not everybody's like but yeah, but because of that, he puts forth a concerted effort, and by the end of the series, you notice that he says, or some supporting character glances over and says, as usual, unlike usually characteristic of John, he's not biting his nails. And they're like, wow, notable change in his behavior based on some event that happened throughout the sequence of events, which is the plot. So yeah, all of these things, when you put them together now, that blend of these things and how they interconnect and how well they're crafted individually and together as a suite of things, is what allows the story to be a really good, engaging, and enjoyable story. So yeah, I would say that for me, in essence, yeah, that's basically what it is to write a short story. For me, those are the steps that I take towards writing a short story. All right, so yeah, that's the end of the video for now, and look out for more in this series. I very much appreciate having you. So like, comment, share, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you get notified each and every time that Vela decides to drop in with another video. Yeah. All right, so see you in the next one.